So in this lesson, we are going to look at what we call media events. Now these media events also apply to audio, which is why I've called them media events. And when we start to make our query selectors to our DOM elements, we're also going to call these media because we don't want to tie them directly to a video or perhaps an audio element. So what we're going to do after our div class of player is start to create some constants where we can then reference some of these DOM nodes. So here we're going to say query selector is going to give us the player, and then we can go and grab our particular video. Now for this, as I mentioned, I'm going to call this the media, and from there we're then going to use another query selector and go and grab our media. Now at the moment we do not have a media class, so let's go ahead and just add this. So once we have our media, it's important to understand what we want to do with this. Now when we come to building out our custom video player, in the sense that we're going to have custom durations, timeline scrubbing, volume adjustments, essentially anything that we can see here we're going to rebuild ourselves, we want to master these media events. Now for this, every nice event starts with an event listener. So what we want to do is first we're going to attack these in order. So we're going to type them out essentially and then have a look what they give us. Now the first one that we're going to look at is this duration change. This thing gives us an event object back through our function arguments. We can then say console log event.target. Now if we just simply log this out and hit save, you can see that this recompiles and we then have our video with a class of media. Now instead of our event target, if we change this over to console dir, we can then start to expand and we can see a ton of attributes here. Now some that we are interested in, you can see we have muted, we have loop, we can also see ended, timing, duration, lots of things which are definitely useful to us when developing a custom video player. So this is exactly what you want to inspect if you want to do exactly that. So we'll change this back to a console log, and instead of logging out the entire target, we're going to log out the duration. So you can see that here we have 11 seconds and here we have 11.8. So this is a more accurate representation of the duration of the video, and our video player in the actual browser is then taking care of just displaying the seconds as it likes. Now you can see here every time we hit save, our code then recompiles and we are getting this duration change. Now this is because the video has been loaded and it then calculates the duration and it fires this duration change event. So this technically is our initialization. And you can see that we have this 11. So that would essentially allow us to set the 11 seconds elsewhere in the DOM, which we will come on to in the next few videos. But for this, we're going to simply just explore some of the event listeners. What we're going to do is duplicate our event listener and just simply change this over to can play. Now, instead of logging the duration, we're just going to add a string saying ready. And this is because when we hit save, we have this ready string. Now, what this essentially means is our can play is going to fire when we've downloaded enough of the video to in fact be able to play it, which might actually seem obvious. However, the reason I'm showing you this is because we have another event, and that is called the can play through. So what we'll do is change this over to can play through, save this out, and you can see we have ready and also can play through. So what is the difference between these? So ready is going to download a portion of our video. Now this is different because we are running a local host video. So when a user accesses this over the internet, it's going to start downloading it via the network, which means that we're not going to perhaps get the video all at once. If we were to break it down into chunks behind the scenes and then start to serve it up. So our can play through is slightly different in the sense that our browser has actually calculated that it's downloaded enough of the video ahead of time that it thinks that it can then just play it all the way through without having to stop. So that's a few of those. Now what I wanted to also do is show you how we can also add some behavior, and this is called the time update. So let's go time update. Now for this, we are going to request our event object, and then we can simply say event.target, and we can then say current time. So here we don't see anything because we're not actually playing the video. We can then start playing the video, and you can see that the duration is in fact occurring in the console. And of course, when it reaches the end, we no longer see this time update. So much like if we were to start this again, you can see here that we have reached 1 second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds, and so forth. So what this time update would allow us to do is then read this current time and essentially keep updating it somewhere else in the DOM, which essentially allows us to complete our own custom video player. So these are more time related. We have our duration, we have the current time, we have some statuses, whether we can play the video. Now, what I'm going to do is create a division here and just list out some of the other events that we might be interested in. We're going to log out the word play on our play. We're also going to have playing, pause, and ended. So go ahead and just create playing. We can then change this to playing. We can then modify this to become pause, as well as the console log itself. And then this is going to be the ended event. And for this, we're just going to say ended. Now, something interesting is we get the event object for all of these. So here we're going to say event.target, and we actually have this paused property. If we were to have a look and say playing, if we go and press play, you can see that we have, in fact, undefined. So that doesn't, in fact, exist. However, we do have this paused, which we can then press play, and you can see play, and then our Boolean value of false. So if we want to know if it's playing, we can say essentially that the video is not paused, so that when we save, go back, we can see play is now true. Which means that we can then say event.target.paused on our particular paused event. So then we can say this out. We can then start to hit play, and you can see that we have, if we pause this, we then have play with a value of true because we are inverting the paused property on the event target. And then also we are looking at the non-inverted, so just the regular property of paused. So when the play event in fact fires, we then see this value of true. We have playing. Now, while we're here, the difference between these two is the play event will fire when playback has begun, and the playing, so there's two very similar events. The playing will fire when playback is ready to start, or perhaps it's been paused or delayed due to a lack of data. So for example, if we start buffering and the browser starts downloading more of the video, we might see this playing event occurring more than once as it tries to download more parts of the video. So play is essentially start. We then have pause, which is almost a stop. And once the video has reached the end, we then have this ended event, which we've already looked at. So that gives us a nice exploration. You can see we have pause of true because the video is now paused. So I think we will leave it there for this video. We've explored quite a lot, and obviously looking at these different events, you can see that we have the incrementing numbers. You can see our pause events are firing, the ended events are firing, and I put these in some kind of order where we have this duration change, which then gives us the initial duration value. This will of course fire again if we were to dynamically set this video source to perhaps another video, which is then going to have a different duration. So that's any time that might change, as well as on initial load, which is why we see that duration up the top. We have our can play, which means that the browser is ready to start playing the video. It's got enough of it downloaded. The can play through means it can play essentially all the way through. That's a nice easy way to remember that, because it thinks it can play it smoothly without having to pause the video and download more pieces while the user is then waiting. We then have our time update, which we've seen increment nicely as the video continues playing. We've got play, which is pretty self-explanatory. When we hit the play button, that then gets triggered. We've then looked at this paused property and inverted it. We've talked about our playing event, pause event, which is interesting in fact because we don't have a stop event. It's just a pause. Now, whether we are in the middle of the video and hit pause, it's definitely paused. If we reach the end, for example, when we let the API itself, you can see we have pause true. So even when the video stops itself in the browser, it's still firing this pause event. There is no stop event. It's just a complete pause. So with this in mind, I think we're ready to now start building a lot more of our custom functionality. Now, these few videos might seem simple, but they give us a nice exploration of the API. And I think we're now ready to start building custom play events and custom timelines, durations, start scrubbing our own volume timelines and duration timelines and building stuff like this ourselves and then tying it back in to the video API, which is really nice. So that's it. Let's dive into the next lesson where we're going to start building out some custom events.